All right. Okay, so how do we read this report? That's really important, because if they come back with questions, we're going to have to be able to answer them. So, year and month, pretty straightforward. Rent, so that's the rent that we have received from the tenant, okay, or from a tenant. Introduced funds. Michael hasn't given us any. Very mean. Introduced funds is anything that we have received from the owner. So that is a receipt owner transaction only. Okay, so if they've given us money towards doing any repairs or maintenance, then that would have a figure in it that we have received from the owner. So that's introduced funds. And this year, for those of you who have been with us for previous years, we have a new column, tenant reimburse. So this is where we have charged the tenant for an invoice and the tenant has reimbursed us. So on charge to the tenant's paid the invoice, it shows up in this column here. All right. Fees, so that's the fees that we have charged during that month, all right, on that rent. But it will also include any other fees or charges, such as inspection fees, admin fees, break lease fees, letting fees, all that sort of thing is all included in that fee figure, okay? So it's not just on the rent. It's management fee, maintenance fee, everything we've charged that owner during that month. And of course the GST is the GST on the fees that we have charged. Now invoices, again, fairly self-explanatory. Any invoices that have been charged, not necessarily paid, but charged to that owner during that particular month. And of course, if we have our tenant reimbursement over here, then that may well be offsetting part of this invoice. Now, payments. Payments doesn't necessarily mean that the owner received that money, okay? They are simply payment owner transactions that have been made that month, okay? So just because we've done a payment owner does not mean the owner received that money. That's a question that we get quite often. Owners will say, well, I didn't get paid that much during that month. If we're moving money between properties, such as between Wharf Road and, oh, that's Wharf Road as well. That's handy. We've got it in there twice. Don't know why I'm getting two. But if we were moving money between properties, that would also show up in the payments area here on one property and in the introduced funds in the other property that we had moved it to. Okay. Now the net amount may be zero at the end of the month, but it may not necessarily be. So just going to scroll down here. Always pay my owners. I'm a good manager. I like to pay everybody. I'm very generous. None of my guys will have a net amount owing, but if they do, just be aware that it could be due to they were on hold for that month, or we had a kickback of $1,000 to pay an invoice or something like that. Okay. Now, if they have a net amount up here, it could well be that actually we didn't pay out the whole amount for that month for whatever reason. We may have had a kickback. If you do have, for example, $40 here and then $40 negative the month after, it means that we have kept $40 back this month, and then in this month we have used it or paid it out. And so it is included in the figures in this month, but the income was earned in the prior month. Now, I'm hoping that that makes sense. Jen's doing a wonderful job looking after all the questions, but I'm just going to double check. Okay, cool. So I'm guessing that that's as clear as it can be. So we also have our little invoice analysis. Now, this is what has happened during the year. You'll notice that the total at the bottom here, all right, is the same as the invoices total over here. So what this is a breakdown of what this money has been spent on based on the invoices codes, supplier codes, expense codes that we have used during the year. Okay, so electrical, we've charged $453.87 worth of work as part of this total here. So obviously in January, that's that particular invoice. General maintenance, though, is not one specific invoice. It is a breakdown of different ones throughout the year. Okay, now if it looks like something is wrong, like for example, if you didn't actually have water rates on this particular property, then you might think, that's weird, why have we got water rates? What you can do then is you can go back and recode that particular transaction's expense type. All right, so you can update these before they get sent out, which is one of the reasons why it's a very good idea to have a review of this and just see, you know, if you have put everything to general maintenance through the year, maybe it actually is. But if it's $5,000, the accountant's going to want a bit more of a breakdown. Okay. Now, if you do have a month that is missing, I don't, but if you did, so if I had January missing, for example, it could well be because I closed off January early or late. So if I closed it off very, very early in December, don't think I could do that. Hang on, let me get that right. It was used to, yeah, if I closed off January in February. So this happens quite often with December. People come back from Christmas and they don't close off as at the 31st of the 12th. Instead, they close off as at the 3rd of January. And so that would put the December figures into January, all right, because you're closing off in that month. So if you do have one that is a month that is missing, that is probably why. Go back to your month-end dates and have a look and see what date you closed off. If you didn't close off on a funny date, we'll call it, so if you don't have one that's a bit unusual, okay, so none that is the 3rd, then do go to support and get them to have a look at it. But double check first to make sure that you haven't closed off a little bit into the next month, because that will have an effect on what's showing in your end of financial year.